Are you tired of struggling with your options trading? The highest paid online is having a March Madness sale on the VIP course. Use code MARCH40 to receive 40% off the VIP course. This sale ends on March 31st, 2025. Go to highestpaid.online and get started today.
What's going on, everybody? This is David W. Williams, also known as the Retail Trader. Appreciate you coming through. Monday, know it's first day of the week. A lot of people still trying to kind of get their head together. I used to say back when I was doing a different line of work, I would tell people I would not email people until Tuesday because I know that Monday they're still trying to get into the rhythm of, getting out of that weekend. And normally if you email them on Monday, they're not going to get to it till Tuesday anyway, right? So normally I would say email and call people starting on Tuesday, right? Maybe sometimes Monday late afternoon, and it gives them time to get into the swing of things. So I appreciate everybody for coming through. So what we're going to talk about is Pop the Balloon proves you create what is cool, right? And their systems make them money, right? Now, we're not only going to talk about Pop the Balloon, we're going to talk about I would say a variety of topics that I want to cover because I don't think each one justifies its own video. If you're just here to get Pop the Balloon, you're going to have to wait around. But also, if you're here to hear me talk about talk negatively about this situation and about this woman and her husband, it's really not going to happen. You're on the wrong timeline for that. But what I am going to talk about is us as a community, right? And I rarely use that term, but us as a group of people being the tastemakers for a lot of things in media, arts, and entertainment. But because we don't necessarily understand the systems to monetize them, right? Other people come in and monetize it after we've already, right, validated it and kind of prove the concept, right? And so that's something that we're going to talk about. But I'm not going to get mad at them because they sold to Netflix, because I don't know if that was their plan from the gate to sell to Netflix. And we're going to kind of get a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole as to why they may be getting positioned to do other things in this space based on documentation that we currently have available to us, right? So that's what we're going to go into. So really quickly, appreciate everybody for coming through. Let me know what part of the country that you're coming out of. Ray Gun, man, appreciate the $2 super chat. Appreciate you go ahead and starting it off with it, man. So that is my goal, to get that in. So big up to Ray Gun, man. Appreciate you coming through, being a mod. I think we got one more person, Miss Phoenix. Appreciate you gifting somebody a membership. Hope you get some value from it. Really trying to make sure that we give you the ability to generate some alpha from being a sub. You know what I'm saying? But you got to kind of learn what to do with it, right? So let's go ahead and get into it real quick because I don't want to hold y'all too long. What we're talking about really quickly, right, is trading and systems. Okay, so I woke up this morning and I was able to get money out of the market, right? So let me show you something real quick. For some of y'all, this is going to be, I would say, unfamiliar. But part of what we talk about here really, really heavily is the markets. We overlap into business, which is really a market. And we overlap into business strategies because that's something I'm very passionate about. And I want people to do well in business if they decide to go in that particular direction, right? So we're looking at the SPY. So the SPY is, this particular ETF is a synthetic version of the S&P 500, what we call top companies in the US stock market, right? And so I have a way in which I was bearish on the SPY. And when I say bearish, what I mean is that I had a pessimistic or cynical proposition on the SPY. And when I'm saying bearish, is I believe that the prices of the SPY are going to go down. Looking at this particular chart, it was under my 200-day moving average. It was also under a key level for me, which is 563. To me, that means the SPY is going to continue to be bearish. The third thing for me was that when I bought the contract, the VIX, right, which is a volatility index, was under 20. The reason why those three things were important is because I want to make sure that we are still in a bearish narrative for the first two. The third one is, right, I wanted to make sure I was not overpaying for the put contract. So something that you're going to see in the markets is that puts become more expensive as there's more demand for puts. So what you're seeing with the VIX a lot of times is as people are looking to get more downside hedge protection, right, what they're going to do now is increase the demand on downside hedge protection. The problem is that if you buy it when the demand for downside hedge protection is really, really high and you don't sell it before that demand leaves the market, you will end up having to take a haircut to sell it because it's just basic supply and demand, right? So in this particular situation, all my conditions were met. I woke up this morning, I exited out of the put. I made about 250 to 300% on that particular put. It was more money than most people gonna make working the day. And then I went and ran the rest of my errands for the day and then came back home, right? And so this is the power of the markets. Now I could have took a larger position, I could have took a smaller position, but I want you to understand what I'm trying to get you to kind of wrap your head around is that there's opportunity out here in these markets, right? You just don't have to get caught up in what everybody else is talking about because that's their program, not necessarily your program. And we're going to kind of talk into another space is that you just don't have to deal with the negativity day in and day out, right? I don't care what Trump does. I have to keep doing what I have to do because I got to pay my bills. And I think that if you don't have a specific economic interest in what he's doing, I don't even know why you'd be paying attention anyway. It's just media, right? And so, but what I want to get you to understand is that, and something I really wish I could snap my fingers like Thanos and do, is put 5 or 6 people together, and all we do is focus on certain things, and we don't care about nothing else. And it's just very hard because I think people, especially in America, they're so addicted to the everything else, they got to bring that into the situation. But I just really wish I could get like 4 or 5 people and just say, okay, we just going to lock in on this and we're not going to worry about nothing else for like 5 to 10 years. Because I know we could come up, right? But I just think people don't get that. I'm sidetracking real quick before we get to the next one. A lot of y'all don't like science fiction. I love science fiction. I love science fiction and dystopian stuff. And I like other stuff, but I don't want to get into that because it's going to throw people off. Battlestar Galactica, the Cylons and the humans had an issue. The Cylons realized for us to really live out our destiny and figure out our own situation, we got to separate from these people. And we got to go off on our own. And either we're going to figure it out or we're going to die out. And what they did was they built a base close to a black hole so nobody could come near them because you wouldn't dare risk it. Built a base near a black hole. And what they did was they just built themselves up, built up their technology. Right? And it took about, a few decades for them to do that. But because they weren't being interfered with by what humans was doing, it allowed them to do it. Because as long as it was around humans, it was always going to be conflict. And what I think people don't understand is that if you keep getting caught up in everything else going on around you, it's really stagnating your growth. Right? And so that's why I said, if I can just snap my finger like Thanos, I would get like 5 or 6 people. Let's just work on these projects, and let's just lock in on these projects, and let's build off these projects, and don't worry about nothing else, because worrying about a lot of stuff is not going to change it anyway. A lot of stuff is over your head. It's interesting. A lot of people say, hey, I'm going to give it to God. It's above me now. But they really don't believe that because they're still caught up in it. Right? So because I'm able to really focus on what's going on in the markets, I'm always trying to figure out where's the opportunity in the markets for what's going on. That's what I'm trying to teach you in the course. And that is a perspective I'm trying to give you around how the world actually functions. Right? And leaving a lot of this stuff alone because it's very much media based. It's very much content driven, but it has very little to do with what's going on. I saw something go across my timeline today, and I'm going to talk about this later, about Sexy Red being a CIA operative. Okay, the platform that posted that story is a satire platform. But it goes to show you how media works, and what we're going to talk about later on in this particular presentation about how agencies work. Because if you type that story into Google, it comes up on all these different sites, which means what? There's an agency effect. Somebody is behind that, pushing that. Because why? It keeps Sexy Red in the algorithm. So it's not anything that is organic. This is really deliberate. Because why? It keeps Sexy Red in the algorithm. And one day I'm going to do a show on this Arab dude that really was one of the reasons why Kim Kardashian got big. And he talks about if you're going to be famous, you have to be hated sometimes more than being loved. Right? So a lot of what we're seeing with a lot of people in the mainstream is that let's figure out how to get people to hate them more than we can get people to love them, because that's really how they're going to get big, because we know people drawn to the negativity. But getting back to the trading, here's what I want to ask you, right, as a trader, right? If you could create a system for trading that wins 20% of the time and allows you to be profitable, right, can you do it? Right? A lot of people are attracted to this idea that what a probability of a trade got to be 80 and 90%. You know, got a 70% probability rate or 70% win rate. That's not how this thing works over here, right? You don't need an extremely high or majority win rate to be a successful trade. I'm explaining to you why. Can you create a system that wins 20% of the time? Because I think a lot of people feel pressure to create something that's going to win 70, 80, 90% of the time. They feel that kind of pressure because they think like it's like a test at school where, you know, if you don't get over 75, it means you failed, right? And so what they do is because they don't think they can get there, they quit. Ask yourself, can you create a system for trading that wins 20% of the time, but still allows you to be profitable? The question is, are you going to be profitable with a 20% win? Here's, in my opinion, right, how I will model it out. What is the cost of each loss? So if you take a loss, what does it cost you? Right? This is what you got to model out with numbers. If I take a loss in the system, what does it cost me to take the loss? Right? Then the next question is, what is the profit for each win? Because understanding numbers, we take 100 trades, we only win on 20% of the trades. But if our profit is greater than our losses on each individual situation, we can only win 20% of the time and still be successful. We just got to figure out what numbers work in that scenario, right? Where most people lose as a trader is they can't control their losses. They can't control their losses. So if you can't control how much you're losing, what does it mean? It means every win has to be that much greater than every loss. But if we can control how much we lose, right, and then we can extend our wins, we might be able to win 20% of the time. It doesn't matter, right? And so I think that's what people don't really understand. And that's something that I was listening to this podcast about this CEO of this particular company. And they were saying that this guy realizes, even though a lot of his bets are like, I don't know, not really, I would say, how do I say, reasonable? His attitude is that when I do win on a particular business bet, it's going to be so big, it'll cover all the years of losses. This is the same thing. We look at people that do a lot of startup portfolios. They know that the majority of companies in their portfolio are not going to be successful. They believe that the wins are going to outlive and be so great and be so disproportionate to the losses, it'll cover and then exceed. I was talking to a trader the other day. This is about a year ago now. I'm not going to say their name because I don't want to put their business out there. We were talking about the record industry. And I said that the record industry works off of feeding the stallions and starving the ponies. What do we mean? We sign 30 people, right? And whichever ones work, we put more money behind it. Whichever ones don't work, we just starve them out. We never put it in more music out for them. Because 4 or 5 people at their record label will pay the bills of everybody else. And that's how we make our money, right? But we don't put the same amount of money behind every artist because why? All the artists aren't going to work. We got to figure out what's the limited amount of money we can put behind an artist to get some feedback, to get some data on that particular artist to kind of understand, do we need to continue to feed this artist's career with capital, right? Once we find what we got, we keep feeding their career capital. The ones that don't work, we starve them out with capital. So this is why you'll see some of y'all remember the Young Money remake, right? Which is essentially Cash Money, but being rebranded for a younger generation. Some of y'all gonna be too young to remember that, right? How many people on Young Money made it? The whole Young Money roster didn't make it. Y'all don't remember Lil Twist, right? What's his name had to end up marrying Black China. Then he started doing porn. I forgot the name of the other dude, right? So the whole Young Money team didn't blow. They looked at the people that they believe had the most commercial intent, and that's who they put all the gas behind. And everybody else just fell off. No disrespect to them, but they fell off, right? I knew who Tiger was because he used to have a song on a Madden that I liked the song. It was a cold little song. He had a song on Madden, right? Then he did Rack City, yada, yada. People really know him from having a baby from Black China. Like, it's a shame when you're a man and people know you from who you had a child from. That's weird to me, but it is what it is. But the whole crew didn't blow up because that's how that game works, right? It's very, very rare to get a label like Cash Money when you have that many people that actually work in music. That's rare, That's why they got so big. It's rare to have that many people on your roster that actually work. Most record labels, the majority of people that are signed to that label, right? They're not going to work for a lot of reasons. That's why I told people with Death Row that have Snoop, Pac, Dog Pound, right? Rage, like all those artists on one label that can make hit music and you blow it, it's because you're an idiot. Because it's almost impossible to put that together, right? Wu-Tang had maybe, in my opinion, 4 artists that had a lot of commercial intent, even though the roster was very deep, but it was only 4. Meth made money, Ray and Ghost made money, and who else made money on Wu-Tang? But it was like 9 dudes, really more than that. See what I'm saying? So what I want you to understand is that if you can figure out in business how to extend the things that are profitable for you and how to cut the things that are not profitable for you, you don't have to win every time. But if you take the things that are not profitable for you, and I'm not saying you shouldn't stick with nothing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have follow through, right? I'm not saying like 60, 90 days. I'm not talking about that. But if you continue to put money behind things that are not working for an extended period of time, they take away from your ability to do anything else, right? And so that's what I want you to understand. As a trader, your time frame is really, really, really short. Cut a trade, go to the next one. Cut a trade, go to the next one. So if this trade didn't work this morning, I would have cut it in the first 15 minutes of the market, right? And then I just would have moved on to the next trade. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? You got to, if you can think like that, you don't need a system that wins 80% of the time. You can have a very, very small percentage system, but you just got to build a system. And so that's what we're talking about, is we're talking about building systems, because I think these are really, really important, right? So that offer is going to be over for the discount for the VIP. That ends probably like 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I would encourage anybody that's still a straggler, go ahead and jump over the fence, get into the community. A lot of testimonials, a lot of results. And I'm very passionate about teaching this because, again, I 100% believe it. If I can wipe people's brains and say, okay, we just going to focus on 1, 2, 3 for the next 5 to 10 years, I know I can get a lot of success. The problem is, we are competing with all this other stuff. We're competing with things that are a lot more compelling. We're competing with things that have a lot more money, and they're stealing attention from a lot of times from away from the people that we're trying to get to. So we're competing with these people for their attention, right? And it can be very challenging, but I'm very passionate about it. So I'm going to continue to do it as long as I feel like I'm called to do it in that particular direction, right? So that's going to be that. So what I want to talk about is, why do people have a history of losing get all your attention? So here's the NFL standings for the year. Last year, we're getting ready to go into the draft. So NFC, we know Philly got that. DC 12-5, right? Great season for them, especially they got a young quarterback. Dallas did what we knew they was going to do, okay? Giants 3-14, okay? Giants got a 3-14 team. Okay, so here's the question you want to ask yourself. Because I think about this a lot of time. I'd be looking at relationships. My bad. There go the Giants 3-14. Okay, you can see it. I talk to a lot of people in real life about relationships. The people I'm talking to about relationships in real life, they've had long-term track records and successful relationships. Not saying they haven't had trials and tribulations, but they've had long-term track records in relationships. It amazes me that people will get on the internet and listen to people who don't have a track record of being successful in relationships. And that will get all their attention. I would not listen to TikTok videos of the New York Giants to tell me about what's wrong with football because they 3-14. I wouldn't entertain it. Because why? You 3-14. What you gonna tell me? And I think because we a lot of times listen to people that have a history of losing for an extended period of time, we can't tell fakers from the real people. See? Because a lot of times the fakers go after the people that sat back and listened to people who got a history of losing. I'm not saying that you can't talk about that you're going through something. I'm not saying that you can't talk about your journey. What I'm saying is that if every story you got is how you were lost and how you were a loser, if that's every story, I don't see the appeal of that, because it shows that you don't have a formula to be successful. I was going to put up the Cleveland Browns and use them as an example, right? The Cleveland Browns been playing football before anybody on this broadcast was born. That's a fact. They have 0 Super Bowls. 0. right? They got 0 Super Bowls. Detroit Lions been playing football before anybody on this live stream was born. They have 0 Super Bowls, right? So you have to understand is that these teams have not figured it out across any era, 60s, 70s, 80s. They can't figure it out. They cannot put a formula or system together that works for what they're doing. And Detroit's not a small market team. Cleveland, low key, is a small market team, but Detroit's not a small market team. So they have the fan base there to support what they're doing, but they can't figure it out, right? They can't figure it out. And so what I'm trying to get people to understand is that I always wonder why in the real world you have people that have actually done certain things in the real world, relationship-wise. You can go to a church and talk to people at your church about relationships. Why would you talk to people on the internet about it? I'm not saying you can't watch their stuff and listen to them, but I'm saying is that why would like a TikToker who only has negative things to say about men or women be the person that adds the value? Right? I don't get it. When you have people in the real world that you can go talk to, go join the church and talk to the people at your church. They'll tell you what time it is. Because why? Well, I've been married for 35, 40 years. Right? I was at church last week and a lady, she helps run the children's ministry. She was talking about her son had to be in hospital for appendicitis and then how she had to go back to church and seeing her husband tag team the situation because she still wanted to serve the church because she feel like that's her calling, even though her son was in the hospital for the appendicitis. So seeing her husband tag team being at the hospital for her son so he's not there by himself. That's the kind of person I would want to talk to. I'm not going to listen to somebody on TikTok or YouTube that got a channel and everything is, well, you know what? I hate the opposite sex, or here's what's wrong with relationships. I'm not going to do that. And that's all their content, like every piece of their content. I'm not going to listen to 100 videos of a woman talking about what's wrong with her ex-husband. Like, that's just overkill. 100 videos of that, that's overkill to me. And you see, you ain't heard enough from that lady since. So the question you want to ask yourself, because we start talking about systems, why do people have a history of losing get all your attention? And the people who have figured it out and got some type of framework that works for them, they get none of your attention. And again, it's my opinion from my observation over these years that if people listen to losers all the time, it's easier for people to come in and scam them because they don't know what the real look like. So it's easy to present a false presentation of what's real because I don't know what real looks like because why? All I've heard is a losing story. So I don't think, and this is my own opinion, I don't think people in Cleveland know what winning football look like. Why? When was the last time they saw it? I'm a Bucks fan. I know what winning football look like, right? I don't think people in Cleveland know what winning football look like. I don't think the people in New York, especially the young people in New York, I don't think they know what winning basketball or football looks like. Why? When the last time they saw it? It's been a long time since they had a winning basketball club or a winning football club in New York City. If you're 25 years old, you don't know what it looked like. Why? When the last time you saw it? You got to go on YouTube to see what it looked like. Right? So I wouldn't listen to the New York Giants and they TikTok about what's wrong with football and how football is messed up and yada yada. I wouldn't listen to that because why? They don't know what winning football looks like. They don't have a point of reference for it. We got to go back with New York Giants back to the 90s to see winning New York Giants clubs. Back when they had LT in them. That's a long time ago. LT like 60 years old. So that's what I want you to understand. If you continue to invest in people where their whole life is just losses, and I guess people think that's cool. It makes them feel more comfortable. You know, they think they're getting some type of warning. Will Wardrobe, I appreciate that, bro. My bad. They did win with Eli Manning. That's how little I watched them. So we talking about what, 2012 when they had Strahan? That's still a long time, right? So my bad on that. Appreciate the correction since Eli. But if all you do is listen to people that lose, the question is, when do you ever figure out how to get a W in anything, right? And again, I really believe that because people listen to losers all the time on YouTube and listen to a lot of losers on TikTok, not talking about people can't go through nothing, not talking about people don't have a testimony or a story. I'm talking about that's their whole brand is I'm taking a loss, right? I don't see what you get out of that. And to me, that's how the scammers come in because they're able to create a false representation of what these things actually look like, right? A lot of people are very, very financially successful and they're not flashy. They don't wear any jewelry. And they're very, very financially successful. right? And I'm not saying everybody can't have their own style, but they're very successful. They don't wear any jewelry. They don't do, real fancy cars. They got nice cars, but they don't do nothing really over the top, right? A lot of people are really having really, really successful long-term relationships, and they don't put their whole life on the internet. They're not trying to be couple goals. They just living their life. You know what I'm saying? And so that's something I think people really want to try to take into consideration is, do you listen to people who have a history of losing, and are they getting your attention more than the people that got a history of winning? And can you determine between people that actually do this in real life and people that just put up a false situation and you buying into that because you don't know what the real is? Okay, that's all we're going to do on that. I ain't going to hit that too hard, right? Next one, let's talk about this pop the balloon situation, okay? So this particular show is going to Netflix. So April 10th, which they moving fast, Netflix will stream a reimagined version of the beloved internet series Pop the Balloon. It's a speed dating style online show created by Matunda, can't pronounce your first name, and Let Amuli, right? They're going to be EPs, executive producers of this new iteration of this YouTube series. We know how the platform works. You get up there, they talk, people pop the balloon. If they don't like it. To me, the questioning to me is very weird. I wouldn't say it's weird. To question to me is very unconventional, but I'm not the market for this show. I talked about on my Patreon, if somebody would have pitched this show to me, I would have been like, who's going to watch this? But I'm not the market for this type of show. So the way the show is facilitated, the questioning to me seems kind of unusual. It's very unconventional to me for a dating show, but I'm not the market for that show. But here's what I want people to understand. This is 2024 of August 28th, right? CAA has signed Amuli and Matunda, best known for creating and producing the viral online show Pop the Balloon to Find Love. So the couple will now work with CAA to expand their intellectual property across television, podcast, brand collaborations. So the strategic move aims to elevate their digital distribution and monetization, ensuring that Pop the Balloon or Find Love continues to redefine or how love is explored and experienced in the real world. In the modern world. Sorry for the misread. Okay, so they signed the CAA in 2024. This is from Deadline. So they already have top tier representation, right? They already got top tier representation. This is how they was able to get that Netflix deal, in my opinion, because now they have the contacts and the network and the tie-in to Netflix, right? So a lot of these things are made to look organic. They're not. Netflix ain't just picking names out of a hat, right? They're not. And so what we have is a show that's doing ridiculous numbers. Let's go ahead and get into these numbers. Here's the numbers on the show. They dropped 5 days ago. They got 1.2 million views. The channel already got almost 1 million views. They dropped 12 days ago. They got 1.5 million. They dropped 2 weeks ago. They got 1.6 million, right? They dropped 3 weeks ago. They got 2 million. So they got over 100 million views on the channel, from my understanding. A month ago, got 2.1 million views. Okay, this show's about a year old. If you go to her oldest shows, right? She started off doing this type of stuff, tutorials and hair, right? Some of them got some older legacy views, but the views was nice. They decent. They way better than mine, but they wasn't like what she currently got going on now. Then what you see is about a year ago, she started doing Pop the Balloon. So a year ago, Pop the Balloon got 2.9 million views, right? This is a serious channel, okay? So we see that kind of when they transition into doing this type of dating show channel. Here's something I want to talk about, right? Because we're going to talk about systems. First thing, how come you are the tastemaker and not the systems maker? Because we know who this show was targeted for, right? We know who the audience is of this show. It's not Congolese people, right? I don't know where Arlette is from. I know her husband is Congolese. They may be both from the Congo. It's not being targeted towards Congolese people. We know who the target of this particular show is. This iteration of the show, the YouTube version. How come you the tastemaker and not the systems maker? This is the question you want to ask yourself. Okay. One thing about when I look at this show, it's very inexpensively done. And that's not a negative. That's a positive, right? If you go and kind of look at this set, right? This is not an elaborate set. This is essentially what you use this right here. When you go to a photographer and they lay out that backdrop, this is a photography backdrop. Some videographers will use it, But this really right here, this is a photography backdrop. So the question you want to ask yourself is, how come you are the tastemaker and not the systems maker? Because I've been talking about this show a minute and just telling people, yeah, man, just go watch Pop the Balloon. Because I know that's a hot show for a lot of people, right? Because I saw the numbers that they was doing. Okay. But what we see, and I talked about this in an earlier video about us being the tastemakers. We in this system, a lot of times determine what's cool, what's hip, what's the thing. We determine that. And then what other people do is they take it and then they expand it because we don't have a system around it. But people are going to us. So you got two African people that said, let's create a show that African Americans are going to be participating in and they're going to be watching. Because if you look at the show, the majority of people on the show are African American. They're not bringing Africans on that show because they will have to fly them over here. They're not going to do that. And I think they are based out of Arizona. They're not looking for Africans that are U.S. based and put them on the show. So they putting Black Americans on the show and they're pointing the show towards Black Americans. And Black Americans is eating it up. Right? So this is how they got their business success. Through a Black American audience. Same way with the one woman, she was Diary of an Awkward Black Girl. I remember when I started watching her with that. And then she started pointing into other directions, but she started off with that on YouTube and then she got bigger. I forgot her name because I don't watch her content. Right? Media Takeout, another African dude behind that. Right? So we see a lot of Africans, and we even now on YouTube, you have a lot of Africans from Nigeria, also from Kenya. They're creating content around African Americans, like reaction channels, but they're pointing this stuff back at Black people. Right? But when they start talking, you can tell by the accent, they're not from the United States because they got really thick African accents. So we want to ask ourselves, how come we're the tastemaker, but we're not the systems maker? Right? Are we incapable of building a system? Do we not have the intelligence? Do we not have the intellect? Do we not have the work ethic? Do we just not care? We just apathetic about it. We just want to be entertained. And as long as we're entertained, we're cool. So she and her husband were able to piggyback off of a Black American audience. I'm not saying they did anything wrong. I'm saying this is what they did to put themselves in position to be able to sell this show to Netflix. We haven't really got any numbers around that. And they could be positioning themselves to continue to make shows in this particular space because this may be their niche. They may have an ability or a talent for this because a lot of times in production, this is kind of how you start. Certain people make romantic comedies. Certain people make sitcoms. Certain people make whatever. And that's kind of their thing. And they just continue to sell those type of shows to larger providers. So that's kind of what they do. Right? So this may be the trajectory of she and her husband. They're relatively young. They may be in this particular lane where they're just going to continue to create this type of content for a Black audience. Get some traction, get some steam under it, and then springboard it to a larger platform. And that may be their system. That may be their business model, right? Question is, could this show have expanded on YouTube? When we look at, I come out of doing production, right? The actual set, there's pictures online of their actual set. It's not an elaborate set. Therefore, this show really doesn't cost a lot of money to put on. I don't know if they pay the people to show up, right? But the production of this particular show is not very elaborate, right? That's why I'm resistant when people say, well, you could blow up more if you did this, that, and the third. That's not what makes people watch, right? You're not doing 1.2 million. They're not doing 1.2 million views, 1.5 million views in a video because they have this elaborate set. That is a photography backdrop, right? This square background, that's a backdrop also, right? So that is a photography backdrop, right? So it's not a really elaborate set. So the question is, could they just stay on YouTube, keep generating the YouTube money, right? But expand and put more money into the show, right? Because when it comes on Netflix, it's probably going to look totally different. It's going to have different people on there. We already know that. But this is not a show to where, you got some shows to where just to do one show, it costs $1 million, right? So they got to go get a network deal to keep the thing going. So I remember watching Games of Thrones. As things went on, the production quality got better and better and better and better and better because why they was able to take more money from HBO and sink it into the show. But if you watch some of the early Game of Thrones, the production quality was decent, but it wasn't like what it was towards the end of it because they was able to get so much more money from production. It looked like a totally different show. But the question I would ask is, could the show have been expanded on YouTube and they keep it and we just continue to build it out on this platform? And so then when you do go to sell it, they've really got to come with the bag, right? Because instead of doing $1 million per, you doing 4 and 5 million per. But they may have felt like it's a great time to sell. But we got to kind of ask ourselves, how come we're constantly the tastemakers for a lot of different things, but we're never the systems builders? And that may just be because we don't have the focus. We don't have the lock in, right? Because nothing that they're doing here, I think, requires a creativity that we don't have. We're the most creative Black people in the world. And people are going to say that's a racist statement. I don't believe that. I don't think there's a group of Black people in this world, we're not taking away from nobody else, that are more creative than us. What they're doing to me is not super creative, but they kind of figured out what would people keep watching. And it worked. And they don't have to put a lot of money in overhead to put the show on, because it's a one camera setup. If you look at the show, people that know production, it's a one camera setup, which means what? It's easy to edit because I don't even have to worry about syncing cameras, right? And then it's a 2 mic. See, what I would have probably done, and that's what I'm saying, what makes me different than them, and I big up to them, I would have ended up trying to mic everybody on the show with a little Rode lavalier mic. You know those square Rode lavalier mics that are real popular now? I would have ended up micing everybody on the show. The problem with that is I would have had to run a control board because I would have had to kill their mic if they weren't talking so they wouldn't be making noise. What they're doing, which is really smart, but it could just be a function of necessity, by them using the hand mics, you can't really hear anybody until they give them the mic. So it means that you don't have to worry about their noise, but you still hear the balloons pop. So their overhead to put this show on, it's on the set. It's very, very low, but they're driving a lot of revenue, right? So big up to them, right? It's a very, very lean business, making a lot of money. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? But we got to keep asking, how come we're not building systems around this? Do we just want to be entertained? Is the whole reason for our existence on this planet is just so somebody else can entertain us and we can pay them and make them successful? And then, we just die and we leave the planet and that's it. And that's pretty much the reason why God put us here, is just to be entertained, right? Because the money is in building out these systems of entertainment, really not in even being the entertainer, right? So big up to her and her husband. They in the show production game. Big up to them. We ain't going to take nothing from them, right? Because they did it.